Hello, everyone. Good evening. Hello, can we all hear me? Good evening.
Yes, we can hear
Yes,
you. Good evening.
we can hear you.
Oh, all right. Good evening. Welcome to class. Thank you so much for joining in. To both mentors and mentees on call, you are all welcome to today's session. We'll be starting right about now. I'm not to waste any time. Welcome to week 5 of the Jiipcc Mentorship and Internship program for intellectual property. We have an interesting discussion set out for today. Our topic for today is TKs, GIs, and GRs, that is traditional knowledge, geographic indications, and genetic resources. And we have already some of our mentors already on the call. Please, I would like to kindly ask for the mentees to try and reach out to more mentees to join in for this session so that we have a full class. And I also want to encourage mentees to prepare, just prepare for their presentation, right? So that when it's time for presentation, we do not waste any time. Presentation time in class is 7 minutes for today's class. We have quite a lot to cover today. So our mentors for today's class, the mentors that we expect in the session, I'm just going to be running through their profile. I will not, for those mentors that have been in class prior to now, I will not be reading their profile. I will not be reading their profile, right? I will just be introducing them, and then for new mentors in class, I'll be reading their profile. So our first mentor for today is Miss Rita Anwiri Chinda. Miss Rita is Miss Rita has been with us in one of our class. I think that was for registration, IP registration, infringement, and enforcement. Thank you, Miss Rita, for volunteering to take us into this class. We are happy to have you in session. Our second mentor, who is already here on call, who needs no further introduction, is also Mr. Folarin Aluko. Mr. Folarin has been with us in a couple of sessions. We are happy to have you once again in today's class. Thank you so much, sir, for joining. Our third mentor, another mentor who has been with us in several classes, that is Mr. Sand Umba Kalu, right? He's our third mentor for today. We also have in today's session also another mentor that has been with us throughout the course of the program, and that is Mr. Max Ikombe. I'm sure Mr. Max, we are no stranger to Mr. Max. It has been quite very, very interesting getting to hear from him over the course of the program for every class he has been available in. Our next mentor, that is a new mentor we'll be having in today's class, is Miss Oyekachi Eriobu Aniede. So Ms. Onyekachi is a lawyer and former TV presenter, joined the Nigerian Civil Service in 2014 and was posted to the Commercial Law Department, Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. The office mandated to protect industrial properties in Nigeria. Onyekachi's dedication to work and intellectual property intellectual property is evident in her various roles. In her various roles, she served as the secretary to the Board of Survey Desk Officers of the Federal Civil Service Strategy and Implementation Plan, that's from 2021 to 2025, and as a patent examiner, she is recognized as a Federal Civil Service innovator and future leader. She has extensive knowledge of intellectual property systems across various countries, having completed exchange programs with other IP offices, a master's program from African University sponsored by WIPO, a diploma in IP paralegal from LOSCIPO, and membership in WIPO International Network for IP Education. Driven by her passion for IP, she actively creates informative content and engages in intellectual property discussion whenever the opportunities arise. Her legal background, civil service experience, dedication to IP make her a valuable asset. Thank you, Ms. Onyekachi. We look forward to hearing from you in today's session. Our other mentor that we're going to, our last mentor we're going to be having in today's class is none other than Miss Winner. A new mentor for today is Miss Winner Apata. Winner Oluwatosin Apata, preferably called WAOA, is an intellectual property and development policy advocate, consultant, and enthusiast with more than 5 years' experience. Her interest in IP started during her undergraduate program at Obafemi Awolowo University, after which she founded the first IP Students Club, IPLC OAU. She has since consulted for a number of startups, worked as a project manager with tech startups, and as the African consultant for International Trademark Association. In 2022, she is currently pursuing her master's degree in intellectual property and development policies at the Korea Development Institute of Policy and Management, where she is also serving as a student representative for the 2024 IP cohorts. She currently runs her own IP consultancy outfit, where she is focused on growing social impact tech startups, leveraging on intellectual property. In her space, in her spare time, rather, she loves watching YouTube videos, playing board games, and writing. You can reach her on LinkedIn at Winner Oluwatosin Apata or via her email address, winneroluwatosinapata@gmail.com. Thank you so much, Ma, for joining. I can see you are already on call. We are happy to have you in today's session. So, not to waste any time, we already have our mentors set for today's class, and I'm sure our mentees are also ready for the class as well. Our topic once again for today is TKs, GIs, and GR. That's traditional knowledge, geographic indications and indication and traditional and genetic resources, sorry, for the mix up. And then just to go on with the flow and the trend, we'll be taking our mentors presentation, and I think we'll be starting first with Miss Winner, right, for her presentation, and then we'll have Mr. Folarin go next. Please, Ma, you have 20 minutes for your presentation. Thank you so much, Ma, for joining. We're happy to have you in class.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. Sorry, I'm trying to... Okay. Okay, I guess I'm visible now. Hi, everybody. Good morning. It's morning my time, but I think it's evening your time. A bit of, I'll say, not housekeeping, but first, thank you for the introduction. And first things first, I'm not doing my master's anymore. I'm doing my master's. Right now I just work within the United Nations here. But yeah, in that Sustainable Development Division. Thank you very much for having me, and to everybody here, I'll say welcome, well done. I saw some of the work you did and it was quite impressive. I will just share a few PowerPoints on my PowerPoint on the topic for today. So please hold on. Okay, so today I'm just going to go over, I'm sure everybody knows or I want to be there, everybody knows what indigenous knowledge is. But a few things to just bear in mind would be that it refers to the traditional and local knowledge developed by indigenous peoples or communities, which is, I would say, more of my background or more of the work that I've done in recent times. And it is usually over generations. So oftentimes this knowledge spans 500 years, 300 years. Characteristics would be that it's passed from generation to generation, like I said, mostly unwritten, which is one of the disadvantage to it because that way knowledge can be lost. It is also rooted in their culture and their spiritual values. So most of them, when you go to these communities, you realize that's the way they live, that's the way to their life. and it encompasses practices and beliefs and innovations that can be related to either agriculture, medicine, natural resource management, biodiversity conservation, deforestation, and stuff like that. Geographical indications, on the other hand, like everybody would or should know, is a sign used on products that originate from a particular environment or a location. So we have examples like champagne from France, for example, or we have Ogumosho mango. Does anybody here know about Ogumosho mango? And if you can tell me one particular characteristics of Ogumosho mango, I owe you a gift. Anybody here? You can unmute your mic. Wow. Really? Nobody knows about Ogumosho mango. Wow. Interesting. Okay, so Okumash mango is different in the sense that in the size, it is usually very big. So you know how you go to market and just buy like ordinary mango and you just what's it called? Peel it. With Okumash mango, you actually have to cut it with knife to be able to enjoy it. So that's the one characteristic you should know about Okumash mango. Um, also, um, it has like a bit of tread in it. So, but I mean, but one characteristic about Ogumash mango is the size, and you have to always cut it to enjoy it. And then for genetic resources, it refers to genetic material of either plants, animals, microorganisms used for either medicine or agriculture. I'm not going to go into that. So, like I said, my own niche primarily is indigenous knowledge. And what I do now is more of how indigenous knowledge can contribute to the SDGs and climate change. So, I would go over just this now because of the conversation right now in the international community is about indigenous knowledge, but climate change. How can indigenous help contribute to solving climate issues? Here it says there's been increase in indigenous communities' advocacy and their participation on their role in addressing climate change, biodiversity loss, and desertification. Um, One thing that I've come to realize during my research is that they are very aware of the environment. So most of the issues that we face now, they have encountered it in the past and they knew how to solve it. So why can't we bring their knowledge now into modern science? Why can't we learn from them? Those are conversations that we're having right now in the international community on the importance of indigenous knowledge for SDGs or climate action. Interestingly, 3 days ago in Canada, there is a community called First Nation community, and usually how they get mat no materials but like products from one location to the other is during winter the sea would freeze up and you can literally drive on top of the sea. Literally, there's no bridge. It will freeze up to the point where you can drive on it. But now, this past winter that we just experienced here, it didn't freeze up as much. So they could not drive, and that means that they could not transfer products. And that's one of the problems that they're facing right now because they are short on resources, on either say tires or food items that they have to transport. And conversations right now are how would they transport some of these products to their community. Anyways, that's just what I wanted to share about indigenous knowledge is that right now it has transcended beyond just protection. How do you protect it? How do you advocate? It's more about their participation in in solving global issues. And I want to encourage people here. I don't know, what level you are right now, but I would say that and from the presentations that I had or I have had access to, it looks like you guys actually know. It's very impressive. You guys actually know what you're doing. You guys know um your stuff. So I would encourage you to conduct more research. It's not just about protection now. We've gone beyond protection to their participation in global affairs. They deserve a seat at the table where we're talking about how to solve issues. So how can these people contribute to that? And I will encourage you, if you want to venture into indigenous practice, it's a very, very good area. It's a very interesting area to venture into. That is all for my presentation. I will share it with the participants or with the moderator later if anyone wants to have access to it. And here you go. This is my contact information if you need to contact me or anything of sort. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Miss Wina, for that very concise but interesting discourse from you on indigenous knowledge. It was really nice getting to hear you share your bits on the topic for today. Well done, Ma, and thank you once again. Okay, we'll be moving on to our next mentor in class. Mr. Folarin is no longer with us. We hope that he joins us back on soon. But we have Ms. Oyekachi in class. Thank you so much, Ma, for joining, Ms. Oyekachi. Thank you for being here. Please, Ma, I would also like to hear from you, if it's possible in the next 20 minutes, share your discourse on our topic for today. We've already started the flow. I'm sure, Ma, you'll be able to carry us through as we journey in to what you have stored in for us today. You're welcome, Ma. Ms. Oyekachi, are you with us?
Hello, everyone. Please confirm you can hear me.
Yes, Ma, we can hear you loud and clear.
All right, so nice to be here today. So just give me a minute. All right, so welcome everyone to class. My name is Oyekachi Eriobanyede, and I'll be talking on cultural, or what I call communal intellectual property rights. I have about 10 slides, so I hope to run through it before my time is up. Thank you so much. So I want to believe today is the 5th class, I believe. And so we all may have been introduced to different forms of intellectual property, particularly the private rights. What I mean by private ownership of intellectual property rights, they particularly fall under things like a trademark, patents, copyright, and so we may have dwelt a lot on some of these concepts. So what we may not have taken home before now is the fact that just as IP itself is divided into two, whereby we have copyright on one hand and we have industrial property on one hand, the rights that emanate from intellectual property work are also divisible into two, which is what I call the private or personal ownership of rights and the communal ownership of intellectual property. So looking at this graph, you find for yourself that under communal ownership, that's where we have most of the topic we're discussing today. Where you have the GI, the GR, TCE, TK, and a lot more. So let's try to understand the difference between the two, the private ownership of intellectual property right and the communal ownership of intellectual property right. For the private ownership, we've learned that intellectual property is a property of the mind, whereby if one develops it, you can birth things like trademark, copyright, patents, and then they will be protected for that person or for those group of persons or for a legal person. Yeah, that's if it's a company. But in a situation where this right belongs to a community, it wasn't created, it wasn't conceived by the mind. So can we definitely now say it's the same intellectual property we've been talking about all along? because the major difference lies in the way these rights emanate. For the private ownership of rights, you had to work it out. You developed it, you manufactured it. But when it comes to the communal ownership of rights, they are mostly things inhabited by a people, a group of persons who find things in their community, under the soil, due to the topography of the environment, and so many other reasons like that. So most of the time, they haven't done a lot of work on these things. They naturally exist. However, over time, they begin to work on these things to develop them more and then to attract investment. And that's when we begin to ask, what belongs to this community, or what rights or what types of intellectual property can we find in a particular community? So this is where the conversation begins. So like you've seen before, so many of them fall under communal ownership, such as plant variety, but mind you, plant variety can fall under both private rights and communal ownership of rights, depending on the circumstance. If it's an individual that came about the plant variety, or it's a community that decided to put things together to bet a new kind of plant. And when it's a trade secret, like your folklore, your TCE, they're protected under trade secrets sometimes. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Like your folklore, your TCE, they're protected as copyright. But when it comes to trade secrets, such as those traditional knowledge that nobody knows, it belongs to a family within the community, or it belongs to the entire community. And so because of that, it only takes those people to tell you what they put together to do whatever they do. Sometimes they believe in some spirits. Sometimes they just believe this is something our foreparents left for us. They told us if we do this, it takes away a headache. And so we've tried it over time and it's been working. They told us if we eat a particular plant, we'll not be hungry, like the Hoodia plant, for a long time, and then we can go hunting for days and not feel hungry. And so we tried it, it worked. So these are some of the differences we find. So they are not things that were ordinarily created by these people. They're mostly things are found amongst their community. So if this is what communal intellectual property is all about, do you think, I'm now asking a question to you, do you then think we should talk about registration of these rights? And if we decide to talk about their registration, which I think is important, majorly so that we can have a database where we capture all the intellectual property rights that exist in various communities. Two, so that persons or organizations or foreign entities that want to access these rights, they know who to go to, or the communities where they can find such rights. And then they can be able to, have a contract and then be able to talk about profit sharing and what have you. However, should we be talking about, because these rights are now registered, should we talk about expiration like we find in the other private intellectual property right registration? Should we be talking about abandonment? Should we be talking about a waiver of rights? Should we be talking about renewals? Because you need to service your intellectual property rights. So these are some of the differences. So in my research over time, I found out that for communal rights to be waived, it means these communities will have to first go extinct. So it is not everything you've learned before now on intellectual property that you can bring into communal rights. So you need to understand that. That's where today's class should start from. So you need to tell yourself, everything I learned so far, I need to box it in one corner, because what I'm learning today is totally the opposite. And so you need to understand that whereas it's important to register private ownership of intellectual property rights, so that it's prima facie evidence that it belongs to you. Understand that when it comes to communal rights, an individual cannot wake up and go and register a right that belongs to the community. So the applicant in this case cannot be an individual person. It has to be maybe like the chief of the society or the community where these properties are found, or a particular age grade representing the interests of the community. So it has to be like a legal entity, more or less, that have risen from this community to say we are the representatives of this community that can take up registration. That's on the one part. Number two, whereas when it's a private right, you can talk about expiration of rights. Here, for patent it's 20 years. For industrial designs, for those of us in Nigeria, it's 15 years. For trademark, it's first 14 years, and then it's 7 yearly, you keep renewing. But when it comes to communal intellectual property rights, I ask you a question. do you think they should expire? Well, my answer is no. You can only talk about expiration if this community is going to go extinct in the next 20 years, because these are rights that belongs to the people. So the major reason for registration is just to keep a database and so that we can assess these rights in case we need to partner with them. And then whatever they get in return from profit sharing should be used to develop the community because it belongs to the community, such as building of roads, hospitals, schools, and what have you. This is mainly because, and then when we talk about compulsory license, which you find in private ownership of rights, whereby if someone comes to you, I want to use your patent, I want to use a trademark, and you refuse, the court can say, okay, having looked at the circumstances, we are granting you compulsory license to go and work these rights. When it comes to communal ownership of rights, do you think the court should be able to invoke such a license to force the people that believe in the sacredness of their rights, that believe in the secrecy? Maybe because what was passed down to them, their families or their community have told them, or their chiefs or their forefathers have told them, if you disclose this thing, you're going to die in 3 days. If you let the world know about the secret, maybe all of you will vanish. Should we then wait to have them disclose and then watch to see if this community is going to vanish like they've been told? No. So because of some of these elements, you can't exactly bring in all the concepts that you've learned under your private ownership of rights to communal ownership of rights. I hope you're still following. So by way of definition, just a few of them. We have traditional knowledge, traditional ecological expression, traditional cultural expression. All of these are kind of interwoven. So for my definition here, I talked about how they incorporate the knowledge of their land, what they met from the hands of their foreparents, invocation of spirits, some actual substances in their community, maybe something they found on the ground in the soil or their foreparents left for them. Some historical element attached to it is what is represented as their traditional knowledge, something they can do. Imagine somebody has had an accident, and then, like, I'll just share a story quickly. There was a time my driver told me he went to play football and somebody got injured. The person's knee was broken, and so they took this person to a traditionalist. And so he asked them to go and buy a chicken, like a fowl. And so he broke the leg of the chicken, exact position where this other man got injured. And before you know it, as he was breaking, this man was screaming on top of his voice as though the traditionalist was operating on his own feet, whereas it was the chicken he was dealing with. So by way of spirit, he was able to transmit the pain the man was feeling and his injury to the chicken, and gave wholeness from the chicken to the man. Can you beat that? These examples of traditional knowledge, traditional ecological expression is hidden in the soil. There's that element. It can be a GR, whatever it is. So it belongs to the people. You can't force them to disclose it. You can't force them to partner with you. However, this is not to jettison the fact that before now, some of these rights are already being exploited without permission. We'll get to that. So look at geographical indication. This particularly has to do with the topography of the place, mostly the soil or the knowledge of the people to create something out of their environment. So the product is usually very unique and characterized by the place of origin. So you talk about in Nigeria, I saw some of your slides, by the way, they're beautiful, but I always appreciate when we want to do things, look at our environment, our immediate environment. What happened to the Jebu Gari example, the Suka yellow pepper? I didn't see all of those. Yeah, so we need to always look inward, look at our environment. What do we have? It shows the understanding of the concepts, not exactly what you find online. I know online you may not see a lot of these examples because they are thin, indigenous to us. And so not too many people have written on this concept, but you need to know that there's still a few documents out there you could have found if you did a good research work. So let's look at genetic resources. Talk about the Ebola circumstance or what was that again? The crisis we had a few years ago, and we're told it emanated from a lab in Wuhan, China, and so it was just all over, and people were dying just like that. So just use that as an example. So genetic resources, people believe that people went into the lab and used some of their genetic resources, some microorganism, and conjured some things together, did a lot of mix-up. and it polluted the economy, or it polluted the community, and then it moved from one country to another. It was transmitted from one lab to an individual, to several people, to several community within China, from a particular country to so many countries within Asia, and it moved to Africa, to Europe, to every part of the world, and we all felt it. So just imagine that. So genetic resources is just all about all those scientific rubbish and nonsense. It's about those things that grow in the soil, above the soil, inside plants, their organisms, and what have you, that can be put together and make things that can actually benefit the society, such as maybe yogurt and so many other things like that. At the same time, they can be pulled together to make some terrible things that can kill people. So one needs to be extremely careful and understand what these rights are, how they should be used, what they should be used for. So looking at this slide, you see a little bit of classification of what some of our indigenous goods are. So we'll bring you home a little bit. So you understand that these things are around you. For me, my best stuff is Nsuka yellow pepper. I can't make a meal without having some of it in my food. And then I have a little boy at home, my son, my 8-year-old boy, who always say, "Oh, mommy, I know what you're cooking. I'm making pepper soup." Hello. The reason he keeps saying, "Mommy, I'm making pepper soup," is as a result of the Nsuka yellow pepper. Perhaps not too many of us on this call know that the Nsuka yellow pepper, the aroma is just like that of a goat, like somebody who is boiling goat meat or cooking goat meal. That aroma it gives within the environment where you're doing your cooking. That's what Nsuka yellow pepper does to your food. So if you have your mother-in-law around and she doesn't understand this trick, you need to explain it so you don't get yourself in trouble. So mama doesn't think you cooked pepper soup with, cooked the meal with some goat meat and you didn't serve her some. So that's the beauty of Nsuka yellow pepper, and it also has some pharmaceutical benefits. The other is Ijebu gari. I schooled in Ijebu days, so I saw a lot of women frying Ijebu gari, and it was so delicious. And then coming several years after to understand that it's part of what I'm going to be teaching. So each time I talk about this, I just remember the picture of those old women frying Ijebu gari. And then the other one, look at our adire. So there are communities that are blessed with this. I think Abeokuta, so when they design this adire, you can feel the tie and dye is quite different from what is being sent back to us from China. And one of the reasons is simply because we have not protected what we have enough. So they imitate what we have, send it back to us, and then we keep buying from them. Another one will be all this Efe-Isiago that we see in the eastern part of Nigeria. And then the other one is the Benin bronze, which were some of the things that were taken away from us while our colonial masters were here. And they gave us what we call industrial property, making us believe that it has higher ranking way and above. But believe you or not, communal intellectual property holds a lot of riches and wealth for Nigeria and most African countries. So what do you do to capture some of this, your communal intellectual property right? First for me is to identify this product. So when we talk about their registration, don't forget it's not to rip off the people of their money, it's not to discourage them, because when we begin to talk about renewals, expiration is going to fall into the public domain. How can you fall into the public domain if it already belongs to the people? Remember, the reason why rights fall into the public domain is so that you and I, even though we are not the creators of this right, can actually benefit and use them to develop some other things, or every other person can just use them the way they want to, without referencing the owner of the original creator. So in a situation that communal intellectual property rights already belongs to the people, so if you're taking it away from the people, who are you giving it to when you talk about expiration? So these are some of the reasons why we shouldn't even talk about renewals, we shouldn't even talk about expirations of these communal intellectual property rights, because they belong to the people, and so you can't take it away. What belongs to the people, you can't take it and give to an individual. Let's just put it that way. So first is to identify these products. How do we identify them? That's why we call for registration, identification of these goods. So if there are communities out there in your environs, your hometowns, it's time to create awareness, let them know that these things can fetch us a lot of money. So we need to come together, form a group that is going to be custodian, maybe the chief of the community of this right. And then whatever we get from it will be used for communal development or communal good. Two, strengthening the cohesion of the group producers. So you educate them, let them know that this GI, for instance, this is what we can get from it. Let them understand what the scheme is all about. Carry them along, like having like a buy-in, because ideally communities are not open to this kind of a thing. They're ideally not open to it. So you need to be sensitive of the fact that this may mean a lot to them. It could be sacred, it could be something secret, it could be something they have sworn to their foreparents never to disclose. So you need to tread with caution. Now, the product quality needs to be ascertained so that you don't say, assuming it's a GI. So you would see that when you go to the market, talking about Nsuka yellow pepper, you notice that there are other brands of it now. There are some from Jos, but there's huge difference. When you cook the one from Jos, for instance, it doesn't give you that aroma I earlier described. So you know that this is not the real thing. So it's okay when something is a GI to transplant it from one locality that produced it, especially because of the benefits within their soil, which is the reason why they have those, it has that aroma from Nsuka yellow pepper, for instance. And then you transplant it in another community. Is it going to grow? The answer is yes. Will it give you 100% the characteristics it gave you from its original soil? The truth is, no, it wouldn't give you exactly the same thing. So it's about that ground. It's about that community. It's about the water from the soil. It's about everything about that place that comes together to give you that characteristic. So that's one of the beauties. So the quality has to be assured. Like the Ijebu Gari, you and I know when you go to market to buy Ijebu Gari, there are sometimes what you buy is far from Ijebu Gari, but it's just in the middle. And then sometimes you get a very original one, so you can tell them apart. So the people producing this should come together and form like a group to say, we have a way to certify Ijebu Gari. So when you look at their products, they're produced by different persons, so they have different brand names, but you see that certification seal on the bag carrying that Gari. So you have to have a reproduction of local resources. So when it's something that maybe relies on some tools or whatever it is they use to make it, you need to work on that so it doesn't go extinct. You try to develop it better, educate the people on how to continue to produce, especially if it's going to be in a large scale, so that everybody can benefit from what they have. Another one is environmental sustainability. So you don't want such a locality because you found gold within their soil. You then want to go and pollute it with oil or gas or whatever that can pollute their soil. It's the main reason why you should nurture that environment, make sure everything is safe, make sure that soil remains very fertile and water view. So the product remuneration, there should be a sharing ratio to say, okay, you guys want to exploit, talk to our community leaders, you've agreed, okay, it's on a ratio of 50-50, and then you're going to number one, inform people that this raw material, you got it from our community, which means on the finished product, our name has to show on it to say, from Ijebu. Let the world know. There's nothing wrong if in America, they force themselves to pronounce the word Ijebu Ode, because that raw material came from us. And then you can say Ijebu Ode, Nigeria. It helps the world to know us. It helps to announce us beyond Africa. So when we don't do some of these things, not only do our rights go extinct, people take what belongs to us, they use it and come and dump the finished product on us at a very high rate. So there should be public policy around these things to continue to make them go on. Beneficial public policy, not the ones that's going to kill what we have in this community. So why protect communal rights? I mean, I've said this before, it reduces misappropriation, a situation where people just go uninvited to a community. I wouldn't use the word uninvited, but that's what it is. You can find somebody from a different region altogether, outside of the country, who comes to Nigeria for the sole purpose to identify the secret in a particular community. Maybe by way of chance, the person has heard about it, or the person just traveled to that locality just to go and see someone, and then discover there's something these people are doing and is making them lose weight, is making them do this and do that. Oh, I better learn it. And then the people are so naive. Oh, there's a white man in the community. He's kind of friendly, so we need to be friendly with him as well. So begin to let out all our secrets, begin to share the secret our forefathers left with us, begin to expose the benefits in our plants, and then this same person learns how to, transplant some of those things and take to his community to grow them, maybe even carry some of our soil, whatever it is, to go and grow over there. And before you know it, they're also producing it over there. Or the stylishly come and harvest and tell you, I just want to be exporting this. Can you be producing? And then the farmers are working themselves out and they are producing, and this person is taking them away. At the end of the day, you find chocolates, they dump it with us. They take away our coffee, they dump chocolate for us. At the end of the day, our children in those villages don't even know the taste of chocolate. What a pity. So let's talk about the protection. Evidence of ownership. That's another reason why we need to protect. Remember, registration is first prima facie evidence of ownership. So in a situation, these communities are identified and they can take up registration for their communal intellectual property rights. It's become so easy to identify them and then easy to say, oh, this doesn't belong to you. This is the community that owns it. So it's just a prima facie proof of ownership. So let's look at the benefits of protection. The community reaps the benefits, obviously. So whatever money comes back to the community, whatever gains, we can say, okay, this company, because they're exploiting from us our resources, we want you to build us a school the first 5 years of your use. So build us a community school that is going to really stand out. And the next 2 years, we want you to build us a market square, things like that. We want you to develop our roads. We want you to fix our hospitals, employ doctors and pay them so that our pregnant women don't have to trek a long distance to access hospitals in the next village and what have you. So these are some of the benefits they can harvest. So like I said before, no individual should be allowed to take up registration on behalf of every other person. Remember, when you register an intellectual property right, what happens? You exclude every other person from the use of those rights without your permission. So this is the danger in allowing one man run off with the rights of a community and then exclude the entire community from their use. No, rather it should be the community registry. Of course, the community can say, okay, because this is the only learned person in our community, because it's the one that brought the knowledge to us, so want him to oversee the management of our rights. It's a different thing. It's different from one person just wakes up from the community and runs up with his rights. So partnerships could be formed even between government, because there are times we find communal ownership of rights that falls between two communities or even between two countries. Like, what's the name of this rice? Basmati rice, they said is between India and Pakistan. So both countries have to benefit from what is growing from their soil. So India can say it belongs to us alone. Pakistan can say it belongs to us alone. So there has to be that sharing between those two communities. So in a situation like that, government needs to come out as a representative, because now there's a cross-border issue and what have you. So it may not necessarily be the community running off to manage this protection. Then the rights may be contracted to a third party, I've said that before, for the benefit of the community. There is also right of attribution, whereby you say, oh, because you're going to be using our right, you must attribute the rights back to us. On the finished product, we want to see this product is from, the raw material for this product is from Ijabode. It helps other people to come to us as well. It helps the world to credit it back to us, to say, oh, so something nice is coming from this soil. And of course, because you are the owner, it gives you a right of action if there's a case of infringement. So these are some of the benefits, and there could be more. So what are the protections available in Nigeria, looking at communal intellectual property rights? First, recently, there was this new treaty on intellectual property, genetic resources, and traditional knowledge, yet to be domesticated quite all right. And then Nigeria is working on its own sui generis law for GIs, yet to be perfected. So we're yet to have a document to run off with. So what do we do at the moment? If it's a GI, we use certification marks on the trademark. That's section 43, talks about certification mark. However, note, certification mark does not say that this product is from a particular origin, which is what GI is all about. Instead, it is used to certify quality, whereby you find a community who can come together to say, we certify that this product is of good quality, it is from us, and is good to use. So we have Copyright Act that talks about the folklore. And so if you want to use it, or their TCE, you need to contact the Copyright Office to say, okay, I want to exploit the folklore from this particular community. So you need to work hand in hand with the Copyright Office for that purpose. What about the genetic resources, like the plant variety is an example of it? That is also vested in the Natural Agricultural Seeds Council. That's like an agency under the Ministry of Agriculture. So what are the criteria for plant variety? Just a quick one. It has to be distinct, it has to be uniform and stable. And then usually their duration, just like patent, is 20 years. However, if it's a vine or tree, then it goes for 25 years because they don't germinate at the same frequency. For your TK and GI, deliberations are still ongoing for sui generis. So that'll be all for me. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Onyekachi, for a wonderful and detailed discourse on and just a run through on TKs, GIs, and JRs. We really, really enjoyed your lecture. Thank you very much, Ma. We have one more mentor on call. We have the rest yet to join in, but I'm sure the mentors we have available will be able to do well. We've already started receiving their own discourse, and it has been great so far. So we'll be moving on to our next mentor in class. That is Miss Rita Chinda. Thank you so much, Ma, for joining in. We're happy to have you again in today's session. We'll also want to hear from you, Ma. Within the next 20 minutes, share with us what you have for today. Thank you so much, Ma, for joining.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Ma, we can.
Okay, I'd like to say a big thank you to Ms. Onyekachi, and I think it was Rina that presented. Your presentation was really, really insightful. So that makes my job easier. So I'm not going to delve into what is TK, what is GR, and what is GI. All of that has already been taken care of. I'm going to focus more on the controversial aspect, and that is terms of dispute resolution. Because from everything you've heard today, I believe you know that disputes would um, always show up, just like in the case that Ms. Oyekachi mentioned, the Indian against the Pakistan case on who owns ownership of the basmati rice. There's also another case where I think it was Thailand that had to enforce their rights in terms of saying we are the owner and producers of jasmine rice. That dispute had to go to the WTO dispute resolution panel. So in relation to these three types of IP, which I classify to be uncommon and unpopular due to the fact that if you look at it from the African perspective, we're a bit hesitant to actually put all of these things on the global market in terms of saying you want to put all of this information in the public domain, because you find out that it sometimes contradicts with preservation of cultural heritage and cultural rights to culture. Where do the indigenes from local communities, where do they stand in relation to all of this? Now, it will depend, sorry about that, it will depend on the circumstance or situation or the dispute question. If it's something that requires a litigation precedent, then you find out that that dispute will definitely go to court. So how do you resolve IP-related disputes such as GR, TK, and GI? One, your first is to adopt, because of the communal nature that these IPs have. You will first want to look at the community mode for resolving disputes, because when you are discussing dispute resolution, you have to know whether that dispute in question, the mechanism that you want to adopt, be the right form of mechanism that will resolve such an issue. So in an instance where somebody comes to record, say, a folklore or a traditional method for healing or creation of a traditional medicine, and then he goes ahead to use jurisdiction to reverse engineer it without disclosing that he had gotten some sort of inspiration from a particular community. That will now raise issues as to who owns what, and then you're going to be having like international trade related disputes. I went off for a bit. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes, Ma, we can.
Okay. So for instance, the treaty that Ms. Onyekachi had mentioned, that's the WIPO Treaty on IP genetic resources and associated traditional knowledge, makes provision for countries who wish to uh, create or make use of underlying IPs such as patent to actually disclose where they got their invention from. And failure to do that means that particular member state will be sanctioned. So I'm going to urge you guys who are present today to actually pay attention to this new treaty. I think it came out, was adopted May of last year. There's also like a minimum requirement standard for disclosure. So if you read that treaty, it's a very short document, I think about 14 pages or so. If you read that treaty, you'll be able to understand how issues in relation to misappropriation of traditional knowledge and genetic resources has been tackled. However, you find out that some member states, especially the African member states, are a bit hesitant because there's no much clarity in terms of what are the benefits other than disclosure and sanction. How does that benefit the member state country where that patent element was adopted from to create this new version? Then you have GI-related disputes, whereby you're having an interplay of trademark and also domain name. So where you have an issue of a cyber squatter who has gone to register a domain name that has a trademark element, and then they're looking for ways to actually extort you. So you're going to be having problems of bad faith, abuse of domain name registrations that will conflict with other forms of identifiers such as GI, trade names, and also, if possible, personality right. Then we are also going to be considering the international trade aspect in terms of how this dispute, or what is the format for resolving, say, the Indian and Pakistan case. So if you look at the provisions of the WTO, that's the World Trade Organization dispute resolution system, you first have to, the party who feels they have been offended has to make a request to the dispute resolution panel that the matter should be resolved. So you're going to go through consultation, and there's also like a timeline for that. If that fails, then parties can now officially commence a hearing. I think that takes about 6 months for it to be organized, and then goes on. But what you notice from all of this is that in relation to this form of IP, ADR seems like a better option for resolving such disputes than litigation. So ADR mechanisms such as consultation, mediation, arbitration. I usually tell people that if a dispute or a party opts to resolve their dispute through arbitration, you must ensure that that dispute in question has huge commercial implications. If that is missing, then you now have parties who will now feel that exploring such mechanism is too expensive. And at the end of the day, that now defeats the purpose of why ADR mechanisms such as arbitration was considered in the first, because it is assumed, or it is stated fact, that for ADR, relationship between parties are preserved. That means irrespective of what it is, the main goal for the party is to find a compromise, meet in the middle, and carry on with the business. Whereas for litigations, party may sometimes not even want to continue having any form of relationship with the other part. They're all just interested in, this person has breached, and I want to go to court to enforce my right. So I'm going to give you a case on GI, which has like elements of domain name and also designation of origin, and that's the Codex protected designation, where another company had gone ahead to register their domain name that incorporated the name of this France, who has been in the business of selling wine in France. So what the court held was that this act was misleading and then ordered that the other party deleted their domain name so that um, the owner of the protected GI could continue to make profit out of it. You also need to consider dispute that may arise out of um, a breach of a benefit sharing agreement that has been signed. So you've signed this agreement with a community stating that whatever comes out of this, we will be here to ensure that you are properly compensated, and then somebody breached that. If there is no proper dispute resolution mechanism that has clearly stated, parties can opt to either submit to an out of court or alternative dispute resolution mechanism or go to court as the case may be. Then you also need to look and consider the provisions of the Lisbon Agreement, which also addresses disputes around geographical indication. Whereas for TKs, mostly TKs, anyways. Whereas for TKs, you'll be having conversation in relation to cultural heritage. How does that affect the people who are party or members of this community? Their cultural expression, would they lose their identity or do they retain it? How do they police and enforce unauthorized use from trusted parties and member states or non-residents who just feel that it is open and free for anyone? I think also that it's very important that those of us here present on this call pay attention to the after protocol of intellectual property rights, which also makes provision on how IPs such as traditional knowledge, TCEs, traditional cultural expressions, expression of folklore, and genetic resources can be protected. You also find out that this framework relies on the ARIPO Swakopmund protocol on the protection of TK and expression of folklore. So for every law, there's always a provision of how this dispute can be resolved. If you do like a Google search, you may not find a lot of cases because of how complex this dispute might be. But for communities who know the benefits of actually enforcing their rights, they can nominate someone who will go ahead of them to actually trigger a dispute resolution mechanism. So I'm trying to recall there's this East African country. I think they have like a checkered fabric that big brands such as I think it was either Dior or an LV that had used their clothing and textiles to create a particular collection, and the community were happy. So as community members of the next generation, we also need to consider dispute that may arise from the use of emerging technology, such as a Web3 or a metaverse, or AI now that is being used to scrape available data that are online. How much can you disclose in terms of trying to look for commercialization models that would benefit your community and not allow someone to come and monopolize what should be kept for the next generation? Because sometimes when this policies or measures are not put in place, you will always leave gaps for entities who are capitalists and who are just so focused on monetization and monopolizing um, the available materials which they consider to be the public domain. So public domain for IP practitioners will mean that the term of duration has passed. Whereas a layman would consider public domain to mean anything that you put online. So let's say you have a festival ongoing in your community, and there are certain rules that have been passed down stating that you cannot share that information. But now where we are in an era where the tourism sector, the hospitality sector are looking for ways to draw in people, you may not want to take advantage of that of being like a go-to person and end up sharing sensitive information that should not even get into the wrong hand. Then someone decides to create a copyrighted work out of, say, a poem or a movie or a documentary, and then your community is upset about that. So you also need to consider, I think it's the case I was talking about is the Massa fabric where brands like Louis Vuitton, Valentino took elements of that to develop profitable fashion pieces, and they were not willing to share. So those are some of the issues that we will find in terms of dispute resolution. The reason why sometimes it's required that in such conversations or in such situations you hire an expert who has either cultural heritage knowledge or cultural preservation knowledge or arts law knowledge or IP knowledge and dispute resolution knowledge such as mediation and arbitration and not necessarily litigation. It's that you are able to guide the pride and ego of every party that is involved in that conversation. This party, that is the community, is not willing to give up their rights, and they also see monetization of their communal right or their identity as something that should not be crossed. So you now have conversation in terms of morality, not moral rights now, where you're talking about someone not distorting your bonds. You find out also that there's this perception that Africans they are moralists. They rather stick to the traditional African model of doing business than actually look at it from the perspective where someone can decide to bring in revenue for them. So for IPs such as TKs, GR, and GI, every party involved either from individual level or an association level or community level must have it at the back of their mind that there is always bound to be a dispute. When that happens, we opt for a customary mode of resolving this dispute or look for a rebranded model, because there's this perception or story that is being told in the dispute resolution community with an arbitrator that our communal way for resolving dispute was reverse engineered and sold back to us as a Westerner. Because if you look at it in the community where there's a boundary or a fight against who owns superiority in relation to a particular traditional artwork, say a handicraft or something, the head of the community will always want to bring parties and listen to them. And that is how alternative resolution mechanism works. You're not coming in to act as a judge and try to force your way through. Your goal is to basically sit and listen and give an opinion that may end up being either a consent judgment or a final award at the end of the day. So these are some of the this resolution aspect that I wanted to make emphasis on, and not focus so much on what is TK or the legal framework, And I believe that not just for this form of IP, but for every other IPs that you guys may have an interest in and you want to develop, your expertise in. Me too. Oh my God. Can I continue?
Yes, ma, you can't. Sorry about that.
Okay, no worries. You should consider the disposition aspect in terms of practice because that's also like a burden area for us here in Africa and also in Nigeria. Like Mr. Onyekachi had mentioned, the GI Bill is there. We've had just one public hearing, and I think we're going to have another one. There's a provision for how GI-related disputes can be resolved, who can be appointed in that instance. So I'm going to end here and wait for your questions, but I hope I was able to insight and add more knowledge to what you guys already know. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Miss Onyekachi, Miss Rita, for that wonderful discourse from you. It was really nice getting to see or hear your perspective, the angle you came by talking about dispute resolutions within the context of those kinds of intellectual property. Thank you very much, Ma, for your shared knowledge. So we'll be going straight to Menti's presentation. We'll be starting off with Group 1. Please, the group presenter for Group 1, you can come up to make your presentation so that we can get going. Please, presentation time is 10 minutes. Let's try as much as possible to stick to time so that we can have feedbacks. We can take feedbacks from the mentors and then take questions and answers. So please, can we have the group presenter for Group 1? Group presenter for Group 1, are you with us? Mr. Chimo, are you with us? Okay. While we're waiting to get Group 1's presentation. Okay. So please, presentation, 10 minutes for your presentation. Let's have it as quick as possible. Mr. Jim, are you with us?
Yes, sir.
All right, please, we're waiting for your presentation on behalf of your group.
I can't hear you.
So what we would do is we will take Group 1's presentation later on. Let's go over and start with Group 2 while Group 1 gets to fix up, what's going on with them. So please, Group 2 presenter, if you're with us, please, would like to take your presentation.
Good evening, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, good evening. We can hear you.
Okay. Is I going to be helping me with the slides?
Okay. Just give me a moment. Let me try and do that. But you can start off with introducing yourself.
All right, sir. So good evening, everyone. Good evening to our mentors and all our speakers so far. First of all, I want to say a big thank you for taking your time to be with us today, and to other mentees. I hope you have a good time as you listen to my presentation. I am Alf for God's favor, and I'll be representing Group 2 in today's presentation.
Okay, your slides are.
All right, so thank you, sir. Okay, so the topic for Group 2's presentation is bioprospecting, and genetic resources. Okay. So basically, bioprospecting involves the exploration of biodiversity, particularly genetic resources, and traditional ecological knowledge in the making of the production of items for commercial purposes. These items could include agricultural products, it could include cosmetics, it could include pharmaceutical products, etc. Another definition of bioprospecting could be a systematic and organized search for useful products derived from bioresources. Bioresources can be gotten from plants, it could be gotten from microorganisms, animals, etc. And the overall purpose of bioprospecting is for commercialization, the making of profits and the sales of these products. Yes, and of course, bioprospecting gives room for innovation. It gives room for the making of or the production of new items, generation of new ideas. However, it also raises questions and it also raises concerns because, as I mentioned earlier, bioprospecting involves the use of traditional ecological knowledge, and most times these companies or these producers don't give credit to the community, the indigenous product or ecological knowledge they utilize in the production of these items. So it also raises concerns of, okay, the next slide. It raises a primary ethical issue of bioprivacy. And bioprivacy basically means, I would say, an infringement of bioresources, basically. And in this case, as one of our mentors mentioned earlier, this would not fall under individual intellectual property rights. It would fall under communal intellectual property rights because these bioresources belongs to specific traditional communities. And in fact, the knowledge used in the production of these things also fall under that category. Please, the next slide. So now a case study, which is just one out of many cases, is the case of the Udia plant in South Africa. So this particular plant is used basically by people in a certain community in Kalahari Desert for as an appetite suppressant. However, a pharmaceutical company got wind of this information or this traditional knowledge, and they used the knowledge and maybe the product as well in the production of the pharmaceutical product. Of course, without giving credit, without giving credit basically to the community where the traditional ecological knowledge is getting from. And more importantly, they didn't, of course, share profits derived from the product with this particular community. And it continues for a while, but I think after advocacy has stated here, a benefit sharing agreement was established in 2004, where the particular community where this particular product was getting from began getting a particular percentage of profits derived from the product. Next slide.
God's favor, sorry, please, your volume is a bit slow. Can you kindly try to speak up?
All right. Sir.
Is it better now, sir?
Yeah, much better.
Can you still hear me, sir?
I say yes, we can hear you. It's much better.
Okay. Please, next slide. I think, okay. So moving on, traditional ecological knowledge. As earlier mentioned by one of our mentors, traditional ecological knowledge, which is TEK, refers to the cumulative body of knowledge, practices, beliefs about ecosystems which have been developed and, of course, utilized by particular local communities. And this knowledge is passed down or has been passed down from generations way beyond, far beyond, right? And up until recently, this knowledge has been peculiar to local communities where they are derived from. And of course, they recognize it as a part of their culture and they utilize it in their daily practices. However, okay, I'm talking about the intersection of TEK with conservation practices now. And TEK currently has been recognized as a vital tool for sustainable development and biodiversity conservation. In fact, even climate change adaptation, basically. Please, next slide. Now, the role of TEK in biodiversity conservation. So, as I defined it earlier, TEK refers to certain or the cumulative body of practices and knowledge, basically used by indigenous communities to navigate their daily practices, basically. So, it's TEK actually play a role in biodiversity conservation. For instance, there are certain practices put up by local communities that, in a way, contribute to sustainable development and, in fact, climate change, growth, or let's say adaptation. For example, the Maya people of Central America practice forest gardening, integrating crops like maize, beans, and squash into diverse forest ecosystem. A more relatable example could be various cultural practices by farmers. For instance, crop rotation, strip farming, bush following. These are cultural practices, and of course, they are more eco-friendly when it comes to conserving the ecosystem. For instance, another example could be still in agricultural processes now, in trying to eliminate pests and, let's say, weeds from farm. In modern day, there have been the use of chemicals and other advanced, I would say, advanced practices, which may not be eco-friendly, basically. But then, traditional ecological knowledge involves more sustainable practices, like instead of using pesticides, chemicides to eliminate all of these weeds and pests, TEKs would utilize more biological practices or cultural practices like the mixing of crops on the same farm, where in such a way that one crop will assist to eliminate these weeds naturally, or the use of animals or other animals basically that are predators to these pests, basically. So these are more sustainable practices as compared to more recent practices of using chemicide and pesticide, basically, and others. Please, next slide. Also, TEKs play a vital role in climate change adaptation. Of recent, there have been increased advocacy for climate change sustaining, basically. But it has come to the notice of people that TEKs, in fact, play right from time had played a vital role in this climate change adaptation. For instance, as the example given here is the example of the Aboriginal Australians who made use of cultural burning or cool burning, that is low intensity fires, to manage vegetation and reduce the risks of wildfires. If you're familiar with the ecosystem in Australia, you'll be aware that it's very prone and susceptible to wildfires. But then the original traditional people that live there have developed the practice of cultural burning that is more eco-friendly in that sense. Also, there are many other examples apart from this that was stated here. That many other examples of TEKs that are climate change, climate friendly, basically. Next slide. Now we have the concept of globalization and indigenous rights, the intersection between globalization and TEKs. Now, globalization, as we know, is the increased interrelation between nations of the world, of course, in recent times, right? And there have been also an increasing agitation as regards the intersection between globalization and TEKs, because they both don't seem to coexist rather. Globalization through trade agreements and economic integration rather, profoundly impacts indigenous rights, particularly regarding the protection of IP. Basically, as I said earlier, the increasing globalization in the world have seemed to be contrasting with traditional ecological knowledge and practices, basically. Can we move to the next slide, please? Yes, globalization it seems to threaten the existence of TEKs. So, for instance, let me give an example of colonization. So, before colonization, let me use Nigeria for instance. Before colonization in Nigeria has we have had our indigenous communities existing, right? But then with the coming of colonialists in certain regions, basically, we have seen exploitation of land resources, natural resources, mineral resources to the advantage, basically. So this is more like an infringement of TEKs because before this globalization, before this colonization and all of this, we were existing independently, right? And we're more like doing well on our own. But then with the coming of these foreign nations, it has seemed to be an infringement of our TK because most foreign companies, especially the industrial ones, have made use of traditional knowledge, resources to the advantage, of course, without even giving credit to their original sources, which is most of all these local communities, right? And what is the intersection of TEKs with trade agreements? So one of the governing trade agreements, I would say trade governing agreement basically is the trade related aspect of intellectual property rights under the World Trade Organization. However, this particular agreement has been seen to prioritize Western intellectual property rights models, which is not entirely compatible with indigenous collective rights. So it seems to prioritize Western communities and Western practices. And most times, these practices and most of these practices are not in tandem with local practices. I can't think of a specific example now, but then I guess we'll be able to relate to that. Please, can we move on? Okay, I think in regards to that last slide, an example could be, in Western nations, one of their major economic practice there is capitalism. However, in most African and local communities, what we practice is communalism. So the TRIPs, TRIPS, I will call it TRIPS, would basically prioritize capitalist models as opposed to communal models, which is what is found in many local communities, especially in Africa, right? Okay, an example is here, the patenting of turmeric. So a US company, right, registered turmeric as their patent. However, it was found that that particular product was a traditional ecological knowledge that belonged to a community in India, right? And this is just one of the many examples that reveals how globalization can commodify indigenous knowledge without even consent or giving credit to these local communities or indigenous communities where this knowledge or products are gotten from. Please, next slide. Also, globalization can erode cultural heritage through cultural assimilation and market pressure. We have examples such as local artifacts from communities, especially in Africa, yeah, which have been exported to foreign countries. We have a lot of them and can be found in their museums. This to an extent is an exploitation of cultural heritage. There are many more examples. In fact, there are many more examples basically, and this speaks volume to how much globalization impacts TEKs, and of course negatively in that wise. For another example here is the Maasai, if I get the pronunciation correctly, Maasai of East Africa. They have been faced with appropriation of their distinctive beadwork and clothing designs by global fashion brands. Okay, I think there's a picture underneath. Okay, I don't know if this is a specific picture, but then this could appeal to that. This particular local community have raised agitations as regards how their local artifacts, which they are known for their, I would say their local trademark, their beadwork, have been exploited by global companies which usually have much more, I would say, economic power and dominance, and they have exploited this local heritage without giving credit and even without consent of this local community. So this again speaks volume to how globalization impacts local communities. Now, indigenous rights in a global economy. This is just an advancement to what I've said earlier. Another example could be land resources, land and natural resources. They are usually undermined by multinational corporations that are that seek natural resources for, of course, their produce and all of that. So most times, of course, they are lacking in those resources, and where they can be found are most times usually local communities. And with the advent of globalization, they have exploited these local communities and these natural resources gotten from local communities to their benefit. And it erodes and diminishes indigenous rights. These local communities no longer have exclusive rights to their natural resources. They no longer have basically exclusive benefits of their own resources. And this is, once again, another flaw of the globalization, or let's say the global economy, basically. In conclusion, the interplay of bioprospecting, which is the utilization of genetic resources and bioresources, basically, especially traditional ecological knowledge, and globalization, have revealed both challenges and opportunities. Opportunities in the sense of innovation with bioprospecting and globalization. There have been innovation. However, it still erodes the indigenous rights and exclusive rights of many local communities. So it is more like there are two sides to the coin, basically. But I think what is lacking is a balance between both, because at the moment it seems to be tilting towards against local communities, their indigenous rights. Overall, moving forward, I think there needs to be a balance, as I said earlier, between globalization efforts and as well by prospecting and indigenous rights. So laws need to be put in place, and maybe enforcement of these laws as well needs to be put in place to ensure that there's a balance between both globalization and bioprospecting, and then indigenous rights and traditional ecological knowledge of local communities where they are gotten from, basically. I think that brings us to the end of Group 2's presentation.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, God's favor, for that wonderful presentation for you. Thank you for stepping up to make presentation on behalf of your team. So please, can we go back to Group 1? We would like to quickly take your presentation and then take feedbacks and questions. So Group 1, are you ready for us now?
Yes, sir, I'm ready.
Yeah, all right. So let's get on the.
Thank you. So I'll be sharing my screen now. Okay, so can anybody see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. Please go ahead.
All right, thank you very much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And before I proceed, I would like to appreciate our mentor for enlightening us on.
Okay, that will give you fellow. Okay, fellows, you do. These guys are playing. Okay.
Like somebody is speaking.
When they goes there.
Please go ahead. Sorry.
All right, sir. All right, thank you. So today's topic is geographical indication, traditional cultural expression, and traditional knowledge and genetic resources. I'm the presenter for Group 1. My name is Abdul Samad Jimo. We are going to start by talking about intellectual property law itself, because from the beginning of this program, we were made to understand that intellectual property law refers to various legal protections meant to safeguard the right of individuals over their creatives. And coming down to today's topic, we are now made to also understand that intellectual property encompasses community right as well, like right of a community over their creatives, cultural and natural assets. So, and this brings us to the geographical indication (GI), the geographical traditional cultural expression, and traditional knowledge. So they all come to play when we are looking at this particular area. And then we will talk about the geographical indication first. Geographical indication refers to the signs used on products, like signs used on products that have specific geographical origin and possess quality and reputation or characteristics that are inherent in that particular location. For instance, now GI protects name of products closely linked to their place of origin and ensure that only authorized producer or manufacturer in that particular area can use that name. So I will give an example of GI, like in the Darjeeling tea in India. So the name of that tea is restricted to the tea cultivated in Darjeeling, India. And let's come down to our own region, like in Nigeria. There's this rice called Ibimo rice that is produced in I think in the southwest, southwestern part of Nigeria. That's Ekiti State. So there's this community called Igbimo. So they normally produce this rice called Igbimo rice. So that is an example. And that rice, if anybody has actually eaten the rice before, you see that the taste is somehow different from the normal rice that we buy. So that is that's one of the peculiarity of this GI. So it makes any product that comes from that community to like it's going to show that okay, this particular product is peculiar to that community, and anytime you want to refer to it, you will be able to like tell that this rice or this particular product is from this area. So, and another example that I would like to give is the Jebu Gari that our mentor mentioned. So the Jebu Gari now is like it's a bit different from the normal Gari that everybody takes. In fact, sometimes people will ask that, okay, if they want to buy Gari, they will be asking that is it a Jebu Gari, like to show that that Gari itself has already taken its own name from the community that produces it. So that is another example of GI. Now we will talk about the impact assessment of geographical indication. And when we're talking about the impact of geographical indication, we are referring to the evaluation of economic, social, and environmental effect of geographical indication protection on local community, industry, and ecosystem. So the impact assessment of GI is crucial for understanding their roles in promoting local development, preserving traditional practices, and protecting intellectual property rights. One of the impacts is the economic impact. So this economic impact of GI is significant because they can increase the value of local products, promote tourism, and create jobs. Like that Ijebu Gari that is made as an example. So like people that produce this Gari is a local product, but people that produce this Gari has already created job for individuals around them because today we have the opportunity of working in that area and let's say maybe to distribute the Gari and all that. So it's a great job and also promote tourism because when you are looking at it, you say, okay, this is a Jebu Gari and it's going to even bring that name to limelight. Another instance is this is a study by European Commission found that GI protected products in the European Union account for approximately 15% of EU food and drinks exports. So highlighting the substantial economic benefit of GI protection. Moreover, GI can help small and medium-sized enterprises to access new markets and compete with larger companies, as noted by the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO. Another impact is the social and environmental impact. For instance, GI can help preserve traditional knowledge. Can help preserve traditional knowledge, cultural heritage and biodiversity, as the local community are incentivized to maintain their unique practices and production method. However, the Food and Agriculture Organization found note that GI protection can also lead to social and environmental challenges such as increase in competition for resources, potential displacement, and local community and environmental degradation. So, the methodology for impact assessment. One of the first one is to we are going to look at the various methodology that can be employed, and the first one is survey and interview. So, in order to know the GI impact assessment, we can gather data on perceptions and experiences of local stakeholders such as producers, consumers, and community members. Another method can be the economic modeling, which is to estimate the economic impact of GI protection, including changes in market share, prices, and employment. We also have environmental impact assessment, which is meant to evaluate the potential environmental effect of GI-related activities, such as increased agricultural production or tourism. And we can also use the method of case study, which is to examine the specific experiences of GI-protected products and their impact on local communities and ecosystem. Okay, so the next part we are going to discuss is the traditional cultural expression. The traditional cultural expression refers to the artistic and literary expression passed down within a community. So, and if we are talking about this, we are looking at, for instance, we have oral tradition like stories, proverbs, songs, like stories in the sense that in the Yoruba culture, like these stories that are actually passed down from generation to generation, like what they're talking about Shango, they have these Obatala, they have all these Orunmila and all those things. So they are the stories that are passed down from generation to generation. Sometimes some people will even ask if these things are real, or some people will even be saying that, okay, yes, they are real. And because of the fact that these things have been passed down from generation to generation, and we believe that it is from our ancestors, so there is no doubt about all those things. And we also have proverbs, like different communities have their way of expressing things. And we have songs, like now, if you listen to the way the Igbo people sing and listen to the way Yoruba people sing, you know that there's there are differences there. We also have them performing arts like dance, music, drama, like that dance, the way the Biron people, the way they express themselves by dancing is different from the way the Igbo people dance. And also the way the Yoruba people dance is different from the way Hausa people also, the way they express themselves by way of dancing. Then we have I think yes, we have visual arts. visual art like sculptures, painting, all these painting, all these design made by Ladi Kwali is an example, and it actually shows how we can create things within our own region. And I think Ladi Kwali even won one award, she gained international recognition with her portrait. We also have the rituals, festivals, and ceremonies. There are so many ceremonies from different communities. We have like the way marriage are conducted in the Yoruba culture is different from the way it is conducted in the Hausa culture or Igbo culture like that. And there was a time talking about the rituals. There was a time I had a conversation with someone, like that person is not in Nigeria. So I was not telling him that there is this superstition that I still don't understand, that they says if there is a thunder, yeah, like if the thunder is rumbling and you stay on the road in the Yoruba culture, they say the thunder can definitely pass through you and in fact injure that person or even kill the person. So, but that person said he had never had something like that before, and that is to show the peculiarity of that saying. That is to say, in another region, what these people believe might be different from what these people, and that is to tell us the traditional cultural expression, how these things are actually different from one area to another. Now, let's talk about the cultural appropriation and traditional cultural expression itself. This cultural appropriation happens when elements of a community culture like music, art, symbols, or fashion are used by outsiders without permission, recognition, or any benefit to the original community. So when businesses, designers, or entertainment industry exploits the TCG without proper acknowledgement or fair compensation, it can actually strip this tradition of their meaning and economic value. And one of the challenges here is the unauthorized use. Some companies use traditional design, music, or stories without compensation. So, and one problem here is the fact that the TCE is actually considered to belong to entire community rather than an individual, because most of the time the argument is that IP laws favors the individual than the communal, than the community, and many legal framework in the world today do not fully recognize collective ownership. So that is where the problem lies. Okay, so how does this cultural appropriation affect cultural heritage and identity? We
Okay,
mentioned four.
Hello, Abdul can you hear me? Not to cut you short, but please, can you try to speed up your presentation?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. All right. So, how this cultural appropriation affects cultural heritage and identity? We mentioned four here. One, we have loss of authenticity. We have economic exploitation, erosion of cultural identity, lack of protection. Those are the ways this cultural appropriation affects the cultural heritage and identity. Then, how can we now protect the TCE? So efforts have actually been made to safeguard traditional cultural expression, and one of these is the international agreement that the World Intellectual Property Organization, they are currently working on the legal framework to protect TCE, and they have a draft called WIPO's draft article on protection of cultural expression, and it advocates for the protection of indigenous and local community cultural heritage. We also have custom legal system. We have cultural heritage laws, community-led protocols. The next one is the traditional knowledge. So the traditional knowledge refers to knowledge skills and practices developed and maintained by indigenous and local communities, and it is passed down from generation to generation. It's just like, it's a bit different from TCE, because this one now is majorly the skills and knowledge and practices developed to sustain and maintain within the indigenous and local communities. So an example is the medicinal knowledge, like the way this particular community will treat their own injury is different from the way another community will do theirs. And also agricultural knowledge. Some community recognize a certain plants to, like, they recognize it as something that can be edible, while some community does not. So like we also have environmental management, like biodiversity conservation and sustainable fishing. So now let's go to the legal framework for protecting the traditional knowledge. So several international legal instruments address the protection of TK, the Convention of Biological Diversity, CBD 1992, recognizes the rights of indigenous communities over their knowledge and emphasizes benefit sharing mechanism for TK associated with genetic resources. And additionally, we have the Nagoya Protocol 2010, which provides guidelines on access to TK and ensures fair and equitable sharing of benefits derived from its use. And currently, the International Property Organization has developed framework such as the Intergovernmental Committee on Intellectual Property and Genetic Resources, Traditional Knowledge, Folklore, IGC, which aims to establish international norms for TK protection. We also have regional and national approaches, like these in India, for instance, they have the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library, TKDL, which was established to document indigenous medicinal knowledge and prevent biopiracy. Also in Nigeria, the National Office for Technology Acquisition and Promotion, NOTAP, is responsible for regulating access to TK and ensuring benefit sharing mechanism. We have some challenges in protecting traditional knowledge, and I will quickly run through it now. This is the last slide. So, despite the legal framework, so several challenges persist in the protection of the TK, and the first one is the lack of a unified legal framework. So, because there is no single international treaty that comprehensively addresses TK protection, so it makes it so difficult to protect, like generally or globally. So another issue is the lack of formal documentation, because these TK are believed to be oral, and they are not written. So it actually makes it hard to establish ownership rights. Another challenge is the biopiracy. So here, unauthorized patenting of traditional remedies. Many corporations patent TK-based products without compensating the indigenous community. We also have the limited awareness and documentation. And the limited awareness is the fact that many TK practices remain undocumented, making them vulnerable to loss and exploitation. So the last part is a question that we raised during the preparation of this slide. So, and the question is that what are the ethical and legal challenges in balancing the preservation of traditional knowledge, genetic resources, and cultural expression with their commercialization, while ensuring compliance with intellectual property law and community rights? Brings us to the end of the slide. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks for listening.
All right, thank you, Chimo. Thank you so much, Chimo, for your presentation. Well done to you and your team for putting it together, and thank you for your delivery of that presentation. We have two mentors currently on the call. We'll be taking their feedback. That is Ms. Onyekachi, the person of Ms. Onyekachi and Mrs. Rita. So we'll be taking their feedbacks, and then after their feedbacks, we would go straight to questions. So I think we'll start first with Ms. Onyekachi. Ms. Onyekachi, please, do you have feedbacks for the presentations that were made by the mentees? Ms. Onyekachi, are you with us? Okay.
Okay, thank you guys for presenting. But I would say to both parties, you guys really impressed me. I didn't look at your presentation before the session because really busy with me, just because I didn't get to see. But for group one, I would say I like the angle you guys came, but like I stated in my presentation, I didn't want to go into the whole what is IP, what is it. I like to focus. Why we may focus on legal frameworks and other emerging conversations. This resolution aspect for me is where I find it interesting because, like I stated, this is like an area that is growing and budding for us, especially in Africa. I think was it group one, the use of no, I think it's group two, the use of the Aborigines, the Australians. Those templates are nice, but I think you guys should have done a better job in terms of looking inwards. Like I stated in my presentation, we have a legal framework. We have IP practitioners, lecturers who have written so much on TK, on TCEs, on GR, on GI. Interestingly, I'm part of the team that was working on GIP. So I would have preferred more if you guys try to giving it an African bias, which is what I do in my brand. In as much as I review cases and I follow trend, I try to look at it from the gaps that we have in our law and what I think that we can do. The South African reverse T case is a good one. There's also the Ethiopian, I think it's the floor or the coffee, one of those cases. But I would say if you guys can also improve on your presentation and turn it into an article, submit it in a well-known journal. You guys are a lot. I'm not sure if the editors will be okay with more than 5 to 10%. But I would say you guys can break it into two or make it like a two-part series and rework the presentation. But I was really impressed with your research. I just wish you guys had made it more Afro-centric, especially because the negotiation for the after IP protocol and all the other regional legal frameworks are working hard to ensure that we do not lose what is considered to be our identity, which is why the WIPO Treaty on GR and associated TP, most people consider it to be timely. But if you look at it, some of the negotiators felt like Africa was still going to be taking advantage of it. You find out the Westerners come into Africa, take what we have, go out there, patent it, and then monopolize on it. They are intrigued, or there's this curiosity about African culture, our identity. So the selling point that everybody wants to be affiliated with an Afro or a documentary that highlights how African countries are not doing so much. But if you follow international trade conversation, everyone always alludes to the fact that the Westerners always come to Africa to steal and then go and monetize, leaving us poor. So what are the infrastructures that you think the government can put in to make life better for with the Africans? And then what are you guys, who are the next generation of IP practitioners, going to do in terms of providing frameworks, awareness, education? Because the truth is, for we who are educated, we don't have an issue because we already have an idea. But what about those who are not educated that get those visitors? For instance, our mineral resources are being stolen through illegal mining. What are the effect of that? I think I'm not involved, but I'm aware that there's a particular island in Badagry that was sold to the Chinese through a third party that did not inform the community and also did not inform the government. And that particular island, I visited, that island is a trove of culture, everything you want to know from the 1880s to the mid 90s. So those are the things you should look at. So what are those IPs or intangible assets that we have that fall under TKs, under TCs, under GR, under GI? How can we reposition ourselves? You also need to consider the part where we're talking about tariff now. US government imposing tariff. How does that affect these form of IPs that we have? And do they have potentials for being exported? Do they have that kind of commercial value to be exported? I'm aware, and I think it was Mr. Sam that first mentioned it to me when I interviewed him on my podcast, that our Nigerian yam is being passed off as Ghanaian yam. You also see that big brands like Heinz and other people are now trying to create African products that are linked. They're not linked to Africa, but gives an illusion that they are affiliated with us. So we are losing a lot. You have people now creating content and disclosing a lot of confidential information regarding their traditional knowledge, the production of their GI, such as the Adire. Adire is now being mass produced in China. You get? So those are some of the conversations I expected. I mean, I do like your topic and how you guys handle it. It shows how invested you guys in IB. I only hope that post this mentorship and events, you guys actually do something with the knowledge that you both worked on in terms of representation and also listening to mentors. So kudos to everyone involved. You guys did a good job. I think again for presentation, I would rather prefer that because of the time limit that you have, it's very important that in as much as you have like 10 to 20 slides, that you speak to your slides and hit the nail on the head. I think when Group 2 was presenting, it started with the whole word is IP. I mean, it kind of got boring at some point, but we're all learning. So for future references, whatever your topic is, don't hammer so much on foundational or basic element. Just go straight to your topic, speak on it, because again, you're being timed. Timing is going. But yeah, well done, everyone, and thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Rita, for that wonderful feedback. Do we have Ms. Jiipcc with us? Ms. Jiipcc, I can see you're unmuted.
Am I audible now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right, so not much from me again because I'm a little bit distracted. Home calls, just got home now. I think Rita said everything that needs to be said. Concerning the presentation, from my end, it wasn't audible because I was using my phone device. So I don't know if it's from my end. So, but if it's from every other person's end, considering the fact I heard the moderator calling the attention to the fact that I needed to speak a little bit more loud. So I think that is essential. So it was a little bit off for me throughout my journey home. I barely heard anything. So, but because I went through the slides, a little bit of what I noticed on the slide, there was this slide that talked about NOTAB as the custodian of TK and alleged the 2022 document. So that was fascinating for me. I think I want to learn more. I'm not sure that is what we have. NOTAB, I don't think they are the ones in charge of TK, but if there's a document out there that alleges that, it's important to bring it on. Let's see it. And let's see what whoever that writer is talking about and understand, so we're all on the same page. That's on the one part. The number two, your slide, I think I mentioned that before I started my presentation. During my presentation, and Rita has already said, so I don't want to repeat. You don't go off. When you talk about communal intellectual property rights, it's mainly for Asians and Africans. And we are the biggest deal right now. So I think I already have said a lot about around that. No need of beating around the bush. And then your presentation, speak to your slide. Be audible, own it. Don't read to us. We all can read. We all went to school to be on this platform. Again, I want to encourage the organizers. I know Juliana and Imam, Jiipcc, you guys are doing wonderfully well. The team, it's been a wonderful back-to-back seasons with you guys. Excellent job. And each time I come on board, just like I already noted today again, and I mentioned during my presentation, you don't travel off the country. We have a lot of these things here. Talk to us, engage us. It's more engaging. And I'm sure for so many of you that joined the call or that presented or were part of the group presentation, you would agree with me, you had a better understanding of the concepts while we were making our own presentation, because we used those things before your doorsteps. We didn't need to travel. So many of these plants I mentioned, some of you have never even seen them, never even heard of them. Just I went online and copied something and come and pasted for. No. It starts from your own doorstep. Talk about Ijebu Gari. All of you are students. I'm sure you have it. You know what the taste is like. So it gives you a better understanding of what you have around you. It helps you to appreciate what you have in Africa. I talked about yellow pepper. So that's where to start from. You don't travel to, another country and then go and bring their things. You can't relate on that page. So Jiipcc, I think you guys need to, during the orientation, before they go to present their slides, to always remind them. It's not nice that mentors, when we come in, we keep repeating the same thing over the season. I've mentioned this a couple of times. Each time I'm invited, I keep saying this again and again, particularly on the issues of communal and intellectual property. So always task the teams to use what is indigenous to us, what we see around us. You start from Nigeria, you can then move to Africa. Then if you want to make comparison with Asia or other Western countries, yeah? So that'll be all from my end. Like I said, I'm quite busy and distracted right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ma, for your feedback and your inputs. Moving forward, we'll do well to improve and make adjustments to that so that in sending out research works to them would put ample focus on more indigenous examples. Thank you very much, Ma. So we'll be going over straight to questions. Please, if there are any questions from the mentees, kindly indicate by the raise of hands, and then we'll do well to take your questions. Do you have anyone with a question in class?
Good evening, sir.
Yes, okay. Okay, who is speaking?
Fina.
Okay, Fina, please go ahead and ask your question.
My question is directed to our mentor who just finished speaking. Thank you very much, Ma, for your time today. I mean, I learned a whole lot from your presentation. So, Ma, please, assuming I want to register a group, like let's say for instance now, just as how we have the Ijebu Gari, likened to the Yorubas and the yellow pepper likened to the Nsuka people. Assuming I want to register the intellectual property of people like this in Akwa Ibom State as the crayfish of the Oron people, what are the steps I need to take to gather these people around and to be able to carry out such registrations, and how do I go about it? Thank you.
All right. Mr. Ikechi, I know you said you are a bit distracted. Sorry, Ma, did you get the question that was asked?
Well, I didn't start listening from the beginning, just towards the end. Fish from Orum, how can she go about it? I think during my presentation, there was a slide that talked about how we can start capturing some of these rights. First is from identification. That's the first step. So now you said the Oron people, they have crayfish. Of course, I enjoy their crayfish and that's what I use. I love everything about GI. If it's GI, that's what I go for. They're more expensive because the communities are beginning to identify also that there's something special about their crayfish, about their pepper. Like the other day I went to market my yellow pepper that would normally get a small bowl, good quantity for maybe 500. This time when you go, they just count some balls of it. And I told my driver the other day, these guys are beginning to understand that there is money in this thing. That's by the way. So back to your question, it starts with identification. How do you identify? You've identified the wrong crayfish, maybe you're from the community. So it's for you to have this conversation with the community people. Like I said in my presentation, no one person runs up to register a communal intellectual property rights. It has to be a collection of those people that will come together to say, okay, these are the people that want to be dealing in this business. They want to be exporting or they want to be selling. It's those communities that will come together, elect who is going to be maybe their the leader, or amongst them they have a chief. The chief can say, okay, I'm not educated, I am old, I can't go and see government, I can't have this conversation. This is the most educated person in the community, so why don't you take the lead? So you can have a conversation around that. But what's important is communal buy-in. You need the people to buy into this conversation. That's why I talked about, you can't then tell people to register, then tomorrow you tell them their right is going to go extinct and it's going to fall into the public domain. You don't even bring those conversations on the table. Hence why I said everything you know before, just box them one corner. So that's where you begin from. And at the moment, GI is in Nigeria protected under certification marks, which is under, I think, Section 43 of Trademark Act. That's where you do your registration. So it's these people that will now come together to say, these are the people dealing in this. We want to have something like a logo, like a certification mark. The best way I can talk about certification mark is to talk about NAFDAC, you know, that their logo thing, or SON that you see on products. How they can have something designed and then say Orum crayfish dealers or what, and then it's registered as a certification mark so that only persons who are licensed under them, because they are community members, and so maybe they are the fishermen. I believe crayfish is from the river, so it's basically fishermen that go to get it here. So the fishermen can say, okay, this is our community fishermen, so it's only us that can use this logo on our product. So when we go to the market, it is sealed in a bag, and you can see that logo and you can trust it. Remember, I said something about certification mark. They don't ideally tell you the origin of, its job is not to tell you the origin, which is what GI is all about, but rather to tell you that the quality of this one, there's an assurance as to the quality. So these are things you need to do. So first thing first, identify, have the conversation around it, discuss with the people, let them know the benefits, and let them know that registering is going to protect it, it's going to help you not to go extinct, depending on the type of communal intellectual property you're talking about. It needs to be captured, there needs to be a database so that the world can see you. If it's on a database and the world can view, they can approach you, can get more contracts, you can get more people buying, people may want to come and test what we have. You never can tell. There could be pharmaceutical benefit to your crayfish that is yet to be discovered. So, but until you go on the database and the world can see you and put a test on what you have, you never can tell all the things that can actually come out from it. You know, generally that patent, someone can register patent for a particular use, and then moments after or years after, you discover new use that you want to still protect. And there's where issues like green patent might start coming from. So the same thing can happen to communal intellectual property rights. So that'll be that for now. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Just to add to that, I think whoever asked the question should go and do a research on what collective marks is and the interplay with G. I think that's like the longer short of my answer. But yeah.
All right, thank you, Ms. Risa and Ms. Rikachi, for that question, for that
Thank
answer.
you, Mas.
Okay, God's favor, please, you can go ahead and ask your question.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. My question is as regards TEKs. So, as has been well noted, most TEKs are usually confidential, and in some cases, they might even be restricted to certain prestigious people in the community, not everyone, basically. So, in a case where, let's say, one of these individuals notice that this particular TEK has been exploited by, let's say, foreign community or a foreign organization, is there any protection for them? My question is, how particularly can they prove that this particular TK is exclusive to them, especially where that particular knowledge is restricted to certain individuals? How can it be proven?
All right, thank you very much, God's favor, for your question. Ms. Risa, do you have anything to say about this question?
Okay, so with regards to traditional knowledge, I mean, going by the definition of what traditional knowledge is, you find out that the issues will basically be either it's kind of like individual against collective or communal control of that work impression. Also trying to find the right balance between maintaining the originality of a traditional knowledge while also considering that the world is evolving. So what will happen if we do not conform to the standard? So you now have to evolve either by improving on the TK in question, also looking at getting community consent and considering benefit sharing. So you have to sign an agreement with people that may want to exploit that and ensure that there are heavy penalties for misappropriation or exploitation or anything that will be done in a non-circumvention way, whereby a party who you've gone into that agreement will decide to go behind your back and either exploit it or illegally trade it or something. So they just have to be, you have to put your foot down as a community person. There's also issues as to cultural sensitivity. So I think, I'm not sure how many of you follow the, what was it called now? The Yoruba trademark conversation a few years ago. A lot of people, when they are discussing TKs and IP, are usually more sensitive than looking at it from the practical aspect. What is the practical aspect? Are we losing our identity? What is that thing that we consider to be sacred? What are those proactive measures that we put in place to ensure that we do not lose our identity? So, for instance, when I think that was 3 years ago, we had a project in, we had to go to Korodu and we had to visit about 5 communities. And there was this particular community that we got to, and they told us, oh, I know you guys are westernized, but here, ladies who are wearing trousers can't come in. If you do that, you have to tie a wrapper around you and your trouser must not show. We went to another spot that told us that females were not even invited. If you put that conversation on the internet today, you're going to get a lot of debates on patriarchy, on feminism, on people stepping on women's rights, what are the right to culture that's or human rights related aspect in relation to that. So how do you then put in preventive measures to ensure that you're able to mitigate whatever risks that may be born out of an evolving space? When I think someone had done like an African museum showcasing some artistic works that they claim to have African connection to. How do you track such people? Especially when you have a chip that's not even bothered about, oh, I need to get like an S25 or a 16 Pro or something. All he is just a phone to access. So those are some of the conversations you need to have. You also need to look at how traditional these people are at the end of the day. Do they have like a form of documentation that if you need to go back to, you can always refer to that? Then you look at it from the international aspect. Do we have existing treaties or laws that makes provision for how this type of IP that is TK now can be resolved? Have you thought about signing up with the WIPO organization or any other person, like say UNESCO or the rest, to say, oh, we want to organize like a capacity building for community? But you also have to be very strategic. I mean, if you've been following the I think it's the minister for Federal Ministry of Culture and Arts, something like that, the lady, what's her name on Vibes or something, there was a bit of an issue when she was appointed. But she's been doing a lot of traveling, trying to project African culture. So now there's like a storytelling about African culture. Now look at it from the TK perspective. If this project takes off, what implication will it have on you, who is a member of a community or an indigene of a community? Are there prospects that you think are available for you? Would you be willing to see your family's secret, say a recipe or a traditional medicine that is passed from one generation to the next being monetized by a big pharmaceutical company? If yes, how do you then ensure that you are compensated for that? Will you be willing to opt for a framework that gives that protection, either a term of 20 years, like for patent, or would you rather that there is no defined term of duration, that it just lasts for eternity, it lasts in perpetuity, as long as you as a community make the extra or take the extra effort to actually protect what you have? So I do hope I've answered your question. If I haven't, you can always send that email and respond to you when I can.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Rita. Okay, Paul, I think, Paul, you were raising your hands at some points. So please, can you kindly ask your question if you have a question?
Oh, yes. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. I had a
Yes.
question. I thought to myself and found an answer to the question. But if the mentors are around, I would still like to put it out. My question is this: we understand that GIs and TKs are peculiar to a people and to a geographic area. And most times, some of these things cannot be transplanted to other places because other places don't have what it takes to sustain it. So how is it important that we should protect it, other than the fact that we already know that these things exist? Yes, that's my question. I don't know if you understand it, or should I paraphrase it?
Yeah, it's fine. Hope I'm audible. This is very catchy. So it's important to protect one so that it doesn't go extinct. Yeah. You know, there are some things you'd agree with me your foreparents used to do as per your community. But over the years, because people are not going to school, they're now more of Christians than traditionalists. Some of these things we are beginning to forget them. We are jettisoning them to the background. And some of them we're not even cursing them to say, oh, these are for pagans, or these are for what. And so we don't do them again. So you find out that in the next generation, some of these things will be totally lost. So one of the benefits of protection is so that they don't go extinct, so that we keep it somewhere on record. And because it is protected, there are custodians that would be kind of charged to continue to practice this thing because of the benefits coming from it, or because of the benefits associated with it. Such as, for instance, you find out that there are some families in various communities that have healing powers, which are kind of traditional knowledge, not known to other families of same community. So because of the importance now attached to it, this family would also have the interest of passing it down to the next generation. Maybe money is now coming from it. People are beginning to seek some of these healing virtues. People are beginning to consult them from different locations of the world to say, oh, I learned you have a recipe for cancer, which you and I know doesn't have a cure whatsoever. Yeah. So people, when they can confirm that this thing is working, can begin to travel from all over the world to come and assess this healing. Maybe they come and house in that community for a period of 2 weeks for that therapy. And then they can actually be certified, okay, I'm just using this as an instance. It hasn't been proven anywhere. But you never can tell what we can discover when we begin to go on this journey to say we want to capture all these TK or communal intellectual property rights and box them in a database. And then when we do that, we begin to do what is called verification. Oh, you said this thing can cure cancer, this thing can do this, do that. We begin to verify. It is at the process of that verification we begin to attract people, or attract resources, or attract people that want to invest on that thing. And because there's now money coming to it, there's investment. You agree with me that this family will do one thing to make sure they keep passing it on and on and on. You agree with me, yeah? But in a situation where there isn't money attached to it, and then maybe the old woman in the village who is the only person that knows what she does to make people okay and be cured of cancer, and then maybe she's already 70 and in the next 5 years she dies, and she didn't succeed in transmitting her powers or knowledge, because sometimes they say this thing is not just knowledge, it's all about power. it has some level of spirituality. So she doesn't, and then sometimes you may not pass it on, you are just learning, but it takes the custodian to die before the spirit now transmits to the next person, and then the person can say, oh, somehow I can now put the knowledge of 1, 2, 3 that I've been seeing grandma do, now I can now do it. So a lot of these things come to play, so depending on whatever it is. So it's not until there's some money is worth that people begin to give value and pay more attention to some of these things to ensure it doesn't go extinct. So this family is going to begin to nurture it, ensure that the next generation, even if they like, they should go to Harvard University to study medicine. The person must still go back to grandma and say, grandma, yeah, I learned you're about to die. Transmit it to me so that I can carry it on. You agree with me, yeah? So that's just a
Yes, ma'am.
magic approach with it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Ma. Just one last question. I will be taking the question on the chat box. I think that was a question that was asked by group one during their presentation. At the end of their slides, the question was, what are the ethical and legal challenges in balancing preservation of traditional knowledge, genetic resources, and cultural expression with their commercialization, while ensuring compliance with intellectual property law and community rights? Do any of our mentors have a take on this?
Okay, unless somebody wants to go for it, it's okay. She's still here. So, well, from my own hand, talking about ethical concerns,
Okay, great.
like you said, there are a lot of misappropriation happening already. So a lot of people keep running off with what is there for a whole community. A situation like somebody comes from abroad, accesses this knowledge and runs off with it, or takes whatever it is in the soil and experiments with it, find that it has some potency and runs off with it without even crediting the people. At the same time, the people, they hold some of these things sacred. So we saying we want to start commercializing or protecting some of these things. There are some things that they hold in high esteem, and it has a lot to do with whatever spirits they say they worship over there. It has a lot to do with whatever was passed on and the fears and their belief system. So it takes a whole lot. When you begin to unwind the person's belief system to then say, this thing that has been passed on is not like this, I can actually give it out. And although they say you die in 3 days, you can actually not die, and all those things. So you find out that there's some ethical concerns. If a people have come to believe that we can't give this thing out, and this is how it has been, we can't disclose it. At best, you be in the next room, we operate from the other room, and then bring you the end product out, but you can't see how we make it. We need to put all those things into consideration and stay in the middle, whereby, okay, this is what has been passed on. We don't want to, how do I say it? It's a sacred thing. So don't want to dilute it or make you feel we are insulting your beliefs, you're insulting your knowledge. At the same time, the world is saying they have a need for this thing. And we are asking that you make a way so that the world can also access it. So like I said before, the people can now come to a meeting point to then say, okay, I'll stay in room A and process it, and then send it out to room B. At best, you have knowledge of what goes on in room B, but not room A. Yeah. So we meet somewhere. There's a middle point. It's not something you can push down. It's not something you can force. Again, talking about all these treaties, all these international best practices, we need to be reminded when we talk about community intellectual property rights, a lot emanates from Asia and Africa, and not necessarily from Europe. When you ask them now, what do they even have as per tradition? Not too many of them can say, okay, this is what we know. And then amongst them, you find people that will still trace their tradition to Africa and tell you that our foreparents are Black Americans from Africa, from Asia, and all that. Not necessarily that they have anything as per their tradition or as per their where they are coming from. Do you get it? So they have nothing to lose. Whereas all these treaties are coming from the Western world, and they're pushing it down our throat because they have nothing to lose. Most of these treaties are actually there to beg for you to disclose what you have, and they run off with it. So I think it's high time we became wiser such that a situation that has to do with this communal intellectual property right. We don't even talk about disclosure. Like a few days ago, we're talking about some IP protocols for AFTA, and then on the document, there was a lot about compulsory licensing. There was a lot on disclosure, talking about communal intellectual property right. And so the debate had to start from that angle. You don't bring in everything under normal intellectual property rights and bring it into the communal intellectual property right. And I believe we have all taken that home today. So it's very important to understand that these ethical principles needs to remain. And then what are now the legal challenges, such as one person can't run off with people's rights, would always be there, such that there shouldn't be misappropriation again, or you shouldn't use without crediting the people, or you shouldn't use without having like a sharing formula whereby you say maybe 70 to the people, 30 to the company producing for whatever reason. Such a thing has to be ongoing. And then there shouldn't be a case of maybe you are producing and you are generating funds, and then government now comes in to say we use the money to go and develop Niger Delta. No, you don't want those situations of what happens in the oil well to be brought into the communal intellectual property rights, not minding the fact that some of these things, although they benefit them, when government begins to put high, begin to use sort of policies that may not benefit the people. So we need to think around all these things and create a balance for the sake of the people so that they continue to play along and allow people to access, because the benefits of intellectual property so that the world can access it, the world can use it, it can better our community, it can benefit and better the next generation to come. Without intellectual property, some of these things that have made life easier, like a woman who is a housewife has to come home, wash clothes with her hands. But thanks to intellectual property, there's washing machine, there are blenders in the kitchen, there are microwave ovens. So that's just what we need from this intellectual property or communal intellectual property right to be so useful that the world can access it from wherever they are. Either it's a healing power, it's a folklore, whatever it is. But at the same time, without discrediting the people, without committing sacrilege, if it's something that is sacred to the people, and what have you. So all those things we need to strike a balance. Thank you. Mojo, yeah?
Thank you very much. Miss Rita, do you have anything you want to say? Because it's like you wanted to speak the last time.
I'm not sure because I think Miss Onyekachi covered everything. But that's about it.
All right, that's fine. So I think we've come to the end. I think we've overshot our time. Thank you, a big thank you to our mentors for, the time and shared knowledge. It has been a very, very interesting discussion, and I'm sure all the participants who are currently in class were able to learn a thing or two from the discussion from today, and they are willing to put or make a practice out of it. I can see we're already leaving, so just before we go, for those who are still on the call, can we just kindly turn on our videos for us to take a quick screenshots and then just call it a day or call it a night rather. Please, I would like to indulge us for the mentees that are still on the call. Please, can we turn on our videos for a quick screenshots and we'll call it a night. Thank you, Fina. Can we have more mentees comply? Thank you, Mr. Akinwale. All right, do we have more mentees that are able to turn on their videos? All right, so we officially come to the end of today's class. Well, once again, a big thank you to our mentors, Ms. Onyekachi and Ms. Rita, for such a wonderful time in class, as well as the discussions that we've had as regards TKs, GIs, and GRs. I hope our mentees are able to share what they have learned in class, and then they can build on with further research, and they can better be well equipped to educate their community around them on how to take advantage of their community or communal rights within that sense. Good night, everyone, and please do enjoy the rest of your evening.